Okay, so we're off and recording for the spreadsheet. So I'll get this uploaded after the meeting. And I think, as I was saying, there's been a number of posts coming up on Canvas or Piazza going through the sample exams. If there's any questions about that, let me know. There's people that are posting up on or signing into the Google Sheets for follow-ups on the assignment, assignment 8, I think it is. Yeah, just go ahead and sign up. We'll schedule one-on-one WebEx with you to go over any problems you have with the assignments or questions for the exam, so on and so forth. So let me get on with this. So we're doing the spreadsheets. And these are the different topics here. I think we covered a number of them last week also. So I'll just run through this. And if there's any that I'm missing, make sure you let me know. So for today, I did the recording for the what if scenarios and the scenario manager. So I'll just maybe point to it really quickly, but since I covered it in the recorded lecture, you can refer to that. We'll do some more stuff with functions, which is kind of over here. And pivot tables, Excel tables, we'll save for next week. Okay. So, so here we have spreadsheets for planning. Okay. So we did conditional formatting. Again, this is one of the ones that I left on the recorded lecture. So I post that on the announcement. So you'll see some conditional formatting. I might point to a little example of that in a second. So this is conditional formatting, the what if analysis. So we have the goal seeker and we have the scenario manager. Okay. So let me pause right here before I just kind of go through it. I know I said I mentioned that I covered this in the recorded lecture, but let me just do something here. So I have this chapter 14 samples. I already uploaded this to the Lao lectures, but I'm gonna do some more work on it today, and I'll update a fresh copy of it after this this lecture. So if we're here, data. So the first one that we had was goal seeking. All right, so we did the goal seeking. We're saying here, which is the average of these papers, quiz, lab, and final exam equals to 75. So this is for the cell B8. And let's say I want to set the average to be 77, let's say. And I want to see what I have to do on my final exam to make it a 77. Okay, and then I'll just hit that. And basically I have to get 105 on the final exam. Okay. So that's basically the goal seeking. This one is more of this one, which is the scenario manager. Okay. So right now it just happens we have 10,000 votes and we have split 5,000, 5,000. So therefore it's 0.5 and 0.5, 1. You can see the formulas here. But let's say I want to change this to be something else. So I said, what do I need? Not this one, the goal seek. I should do the goal seek here. So what do I need to make this, let's say, 0.6? So I'm going to say 0.6. And I want to say, change this cell. Right? So how many more yes votes do I have to get to make it 0.6? So I do that. And you can see it's pretty straightforward. It makes it 6,000 to get 60% of the votes. Okay. And then I just exit out of it. So it reverted back to what it was before. But I could set it. I do the goal seek again. And let's say I want to do 0.6. I want to change this cell. And I click OK. Then I would save it at the value that came up from the goal seek. Okay. This stuff down here I'll cover when we do the payments. So this is kind of along the lines of the what if scenario analysis. We did the scenario manager also last time. So the scenario manager did something like this. Gas price is $2.45, and then distance 200 miles, 200 miles, okay, and then cost is equals the 200 and then times. So there was a question actually last time about mathematics symbols versus the spreadsheet symbols. So this is an example where instead of using the X for multiply, you would use the asterisk for multiply. Okay, so it's just along those lines. And then a lot of the other mathematical functions, they would map to functions within Excel. So like summation, instead of using a sigma, you would use like the sum function. Instead of using the percent sign for mod, you would use the mod function as examples. And I'll show you a couple of different things in terms of doing, concatenation of different things for Excel and what you have to use to make that happen. But anyway, so let me go with this. Let me see here. So I was doing the scenario manager here. Okay, so I'm going to add a scenario, and this is going to be where I'm going to say if I set the scenario to be a gas price of, let's say, $3. So I say gas $3, and I'm going to change to B12. Okay. And I'm going to say $3. Okay. So you can see by setting the gas price to 3 scenario, it just changes that to 3. Okay. So that's pretty straightforward. But what you want to do probably is set multiple scenarios. So I say gas 4. This is B12. That's fine. And I'm going to set the gas price to be $4. Okay, and let's just show that for now. You can see it ticked it up to that. And let me just add another scenario of gas 5 just to show what happens with the $5. Okay, and we have $5 here. Okay, so you have gas $3, $4, $5. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on summary now. Okay, and I'm going to show it as a scenario summary. And that's kind of what you want to do with the scenarios. You want to kind of lay out multiple scenarios. You can see gas at 3, gas at 4, and gas at 5. Okay, and wonder why it's not showing up the result cells. That's what we should be showing here, going side by side. Something like this, right? So that's ideally what you want to be showing with the scenarios. Okay. So let me come back to here. Okay, so we had name ranges. So name ranges very quickly. I can do like a paper 3. Let's say I'm going to refer to the grade that I got from paper 3. So I can define a name, and it would just default to paper 3 for me, like that. And you can see up here on the left-hand side, you can refer to by name. Okay, paper 3. I happened to define some other ranges on here before. So it refers like that. So if I do like an equal sign, so I can go to here, and you'll see that instead of saying B4, it'll say paper 3. So that's basically giving it another name or aliasing that cell. So maybe when you do like some formulas, instead of looking at things as like, B4 or B3 or whatever, you can have these names. So it's more understandable to see what you're actually referring to. Okay. So that's what those names are. So I just named a cell, but you can actually name a whole range like this. I can name all of this to be grades for XYZ class or something like that. So I can define a name here for this whole range. So anytime you want to do an average or you want to do a sum or whatever, you can do a sum and then just call that name that you define for this range. Okay, so that's what the name ranges mean. Okay, filtering we did in some other classes also. That's fairly straightforward. So whatever you have here, you're here, and you can hit on the data, you can hit filter here. And then once you got the filter on each of these, you can pick particular column, particular values here. You can do sorting, stuff like that. Okay. Take that off, and then go forward. So the main focus of what I want to cover for today's lecture really is on statistical functions. Okay, and there's a number of them, but they're fairly straightforward. You can even play around with them with yourself and kind of get a good feel for it. So let's see. So we did the if statement before. I'll just do it again. So equals if, and so we say if, let's say gas price is greater than 3, we can say high, and then optionally we can put something here. We can say low. Extra paren there. Let me take out this paren. Okay. So because I set it to 3, then this value of 4 is greater than that, obviously. So that's why it became a high. Let me see if I change this to be 2, then it becomes low. Okay. So that's how the if statement works. There's an if error here. And so for the if error, let me do a VLOOKUP. So if I do VLOOKUP, and I want to find paper 4, in this range, and then 1, false. So I get an error, right? Because there's no paper 4 here. So actually what I want to do, and this will come up in your assignment, your Excel assignment. So this is probably something you want to make a note of. So if I do a if error, so if there's an error, well, actually, if there's no error, then it just does the VLOOKUP, right? But assuming the VLOOKUP comes back with an error, then you want to display something. So in this case, I'm going to display not found, like so.
It's a good opportunity.
Damn, I kind of turned down like a marketing
That's so bad. Any internship is good.
Let's
And
do
you,
this placement
you
about marketing, like because he came to our class and then just scheduled like an interview and shit. But I told him on the phone I like wasn't really interested.
Why?
I don't know.
Why?
Any internship is better than nothing. What?
That's when I thought I was gonna find an internship though. Like I look at like thought I was gonna get one for summer, but like, honestly, just looking hella slim. Not looking good.
Bro, your mic on, bro. Your mic on.
All right, thank you. So anyway, with the if error for the VLOOKUP not found, so this is not found. So this is kind of useful when you do a lot of VLOOKUPs and you get like a lot of errors. If you have something like this where it says not found, that's somewhat useful compared to the NA before. But what you can also do is, right now I just happen to put paper 4, I hard-coded that value for the search here, and I'll just kind of put that here, but it could also be a cell too. So you can do something like paper 4, and this is where I was saying you can use the concatenation, which is the ampersand sign, like so. And actually, I want a space in there. Okay, so this is helpful where you have the error, it tells you what you were looking for, and it says it's not found. So when you're troubleshooting on your VLOOKUPs, having this type of error message is pretty useful so that you can find out like what's missing. Okay, so this is one of those things that for your assignment, you'll do something similar. So you do a VLOOKUP, and if there's an error, generate a good error message from that. So that's what we'll use this if error for on your assignment, upcoming Excel assignment. Okay. And or not, we kind of covered that in previous lectures, but I'll do this again. So so equals to if, and then we'll do, let's say we'll do an and. So we'll do if, let's say greater than 50, to greater than 50, and let's say paper 2 greater than 80. We'll do that. And then we'll say, oops, pass, else, fail. Okay, so obviously that's going to be fine. So B2 greater than 50 and B3 greater than 80, just these two guys here. That evaluates to true. That's why you have a pass versus a fail. So if I go here, let me change this number. I'll make it 50. Right, then it becomes fail. So you can see how that works there. Like that. Okay. I'm going to get to the financial functions towards the bottom of this. We have some statistical functions, and then we'll have the subtotals. I think we're going to hit those as we go through here. So let me go through the PowerPoint. So we just did the if function. You could do multiple if statements in here. So just like here, when I put the and in here, it's like nesting a function within the f. I can also put another if in here also, same type of thing, right? So you can keep on nesting. It gets a little bit confusing. You probably don't want to do too much nesting in it, but probably nesting one function within the if should be okay. Okay. Right, so we did the if error function, right? You can see the if lookup, it came out with this NA, so we picked that up, but you can pick up on all of these errors too. So you can shape the error message however you want. Okay, financial functions, we'll be getting to that. So I set this up over here. Okay, so basically for the financial functions, you're calculating either or at least these couple here, PMT, PPMT, and IPMT, they're related to, let's say you want to do a loan. It could be an investment also, but for a lot of examples, it's usually around a loan. So the PMT will tell you how much you're going to pay every month if you borrowed some money. PPMT will be the principal that you're going to pay, and the IPMT is the interest that you're going to pay. So I set this up over here. So this is the interest rate, let's say 2.89%, and a loan period of 4 years, the loan principal of 16,000, and then the payment breaks period, which I'll go to in a second. So the first one is the payment. So we'll do equals PMT. Okay, so the first thing it wants is rate. So we'll get the rate up here. But we want to do it on a per monthly basis. So we want to divide by 12, okay, to make the rate monthly. The NPER is the number of periods, which is 4. But we actually, again, we want to do this on a monthly basis. So we actually have to do 4 years times 12 months, times 12 like that, okay? And the PV, all that means is just how much money you're borrowing. So in this case, it's 16,000. Okay. And then it shows it in parens and red. All that means is that you're going to be paying out money. So you're paying out $353 a month. Okay. So the next one is PPMT. So PPMT and similar type of thing. You have the rate. And in this case, you want the period. So I'm just going to select this for now because I happen to set that field there. But that can change. For now, I'll set that. And then the number of periods, the same thing, times 12 for each month. And then you have your PV, which is your loan. All right, and that says for that particular period, the principal is paying this. So the reason why you have like this period, let's say it's 40, right? It's going to be anywhere between 1 and 48. Let me change this to 1. Right, so the reason why you have this specific period is throughout the life of a loan, your principal and your interest aren't constant. The only thing that's constant is your payment. If you did this with principal, and let me do the interest rate while I'm here. So we'll do the interest, IPMT. Times 12, divided by 12 for this period, times 12, and that. Okay, so these two together should equal to that, right? And throughout the whole life of a loan, at the beginning part, as a percentage of the whole payment, your principal is relatively low, right? You can't really tell that much because the amount's fairly small. But if you're borrowing a few $100,000, you can see a bigger number here. And then your interest part will be a little bit higher. Then as you go towards the end of the loan, it will get inverse. So then the principal will become most of the payment and the interest will become a much smaller part of the payment. So if I change this to 40, you can see the interest part of the payment went down and you can see the principal part of payment went up. Okay, so that's how loans generally work out. So like I said, if this was a much bigger number, let me make it a bigger number. Let's make it 1 million. Oops. Make this bigger here, like that. So then you can see each monthly payment as a percentage of that, you can see the principal is getting quite close to the size of the payment. And the interest is getting to be quite small, right? If I change this to be 1, then you can see the interest is much bigger, okay? So you'll see this very often with Excel. You use a lot of this PMT, because a lot of people are figuring out how to pay off their loans and whatnot. So you can see PMT, PPMT, and IPMT used a lot for Excel. Okay. So this screen is showing from here. If you didn't want to do the typing like I just did here, you can go into formulas and you can see financials, and it lists out all these different types of financial functions. But you can see like IPMT, you can see the PMT. So let me click on PMT for a second. And it's basically just a box or a visual representation of what I just typed in here. Right, so you can look at it like this. If it works out, it's easier for you. But if you're punching in a lot of these, you probably won't use this as much. You probably just type it directly into the sheet. Okay. Okay. All right, so now we have subtotals. Okay, so subtotals, you can think there's a couple of different functions with this. Let me come over here. So I do a subtotal here. Subtotal. And I'm gonna do the average here. And so you can see that the average translate, they call the function to be 101. Okay. And I'm going to, let's say, all of this. And I think that should be good. Okay. So you can see that I calculate the average here, right? B2 to B7, it was 77. And then I did this subtotal, which was also the average. You don't see it here, you just see 101, but you know 101 maps to the average. Same thing. So you would say, okay, what's the difference between doing a subtotal average versus doing just a regular average function? The difference would be for a subtotal, if you filter something out, it will adjust the calculation automatically. So how that works is, let's say I go over to here, let me go over here to data, and I do a filter. And I'm gonna go over here, I'm gonna take out the paper 3 and see what happens. So you can see what happened. The final grade, which is just the regular average function, still stays at 77 because it's still calculating the average of the B2 to B7. Okay. But the subtotal function only calculates on what hasn't been filtered out. So in this case, when I took out the paper 3, it took out that grade and only did a subtotal on this. Okay. So subtotal, whether you're doing sums or averages or whatever, they're actually pretty useful when you're doing filters. So you're doing like data filters. Once you filter it out, all of the numbers get recalculated based on what you can see on the sheet, not what's been filtered out. So that's something where if you're doing filter tables, you probably want to be using subtotals. If you just do the regular Excel functions, you're going to get some unexpected results that the numbers won't match up to what you see on the screen. Okay, so that's why you have these subtotal functions. So like I said, if you go into subtotal, let me take this filter off. I could have just taken out this whole filter here, I guess. Let me take the filter off. It comes back to 77. But let me do a subtotal here. So if I just leave this up here, if I scroll down, you can see all the different things it does. Right, so you would just pick one of these, whichever one you want to do. These are typically things you're going to do across sets of numbers. Right, so you're doing the counting, min, max, standard deviation, average, sums, I think I mentioned before. So that's what you want to use the subtotal for. Okay. So we did the and or before, the and function. Okay, not function. All right, so I think I did the not function, right? The not is basically whatever is this part, it will just make it the opposite of it. So if this is true, then it flips it to be false. Okay. So average if, say, I'm going to say paper average. So average if, so I'm going to select this range right here. And then I'm going to say, what's the criteria? So I'm going to look for anything that is starting off with paper. So I'm going to do the paper, and then I'm going to do the star, which is a wild card. Right? And then I'm going to do the average based on this range of numbers. Oops, probably have the extra paren again. Yeah, got the paren. Right, so the paper average is 75. Okay, so it basically took the average of these three, right, based on me doing the criteria paper star. Okay, let me just maybe change this. Okay, and then you can see the average adjusted because now I took this out. All right, but let me put the paper back in. All right, so that's what average if does, right? And count if, sum if, it's the same thing, right? So you're basically searching on this side for some criteria. Whatever matches that criteria, it's going to calculate a function on that. In this case, I set average, but it could be the count, it could be the sum. They all work the same way. Right? So I'm going to leave this in here. So when I upload it to the lecture, you guys can play around with that also. Right, so all of these examples here should match up to all of the examples that, all the functions that we've been doing here. Okay, so this is the average if. Right, the count if, like I said, is really the same idea. And the sum if is also the same idea. Okay. Good. Good. So anyway, does anyone have any questions about what I just covered here? Okay, so let me go back to the chat here. No, this is not on exam 2. So let me just run through here to see what questions came up. Yes, all of the lectures are recorded and available on Canvas. So the lectures that I posted up is on the gallery. Let me see if I can bring that up here. Here. If I go to conferences, pages. So if I go to the media gallery, let me share the screen so you can see. But here. Okay. So the media gallery has the ones I posted up, and some of the other lectures have also been posted up from Raj. So yeah, you can go into here where it says media gallery down here, and you'll see these posted up. I also have some that are on YouTube, basically just copies of these, and I'll get this current lecture that we're doing right now. I'll also get this uploaded, so you can look at this in lieu of anything that we'll do on Thursday, because there won't be a lecture on Thursday. Okay. So I'll take this off. So what other questions did we have? Yeah, so all the announcements that I put out also have the videos attached to them also, or the reference to the YouTube link. No Excel will be on the exam too. And yes, so the extra credit, if you guys took the those practice quizzes, just go through the people who took those quizzes, and then I'll use that to give everybody extra credit on that. Okay, so the purpose of the filter, I mean, think you do a lot of things with the filter. You have a lot of, let's say, big tables of data, and you want to look at a certain section. So, for example, if I'm looking at the entire population of this class, I want to look for certain people that, maybe they're doing very well, and we want to do something for them, or we have people that maybe they're not doing as well, and we need to maybe identify them and give them extra help or something. Then you would do like a filter to say, I don't know, anything where their grade average is less than 80 or something like that. So the filter is basically to break down large amounts of information and narrow down to information that you want to work with. And you can do all kinds of calculation based on those criteria. You can do on criteria searching for different categories or numbers, formulas, whatever, and then do some other types of analysis on those subset. Okay. Yeah, so the equals signs. So 1 equals is doing an assignment. So you remember if you do, let's say x equals to 5, right? So you're assigning the value. I mean, you also see that with the HTML, like x dot value or something like that, equals to 5. So you're taking the 5 over to x. You're assigning x equals to 5. The multiple equal sign is basically doing a comparison. So if you do like, your if, like if you do if statement, you're basically comparing the left side to the right side. That's one of those types of things that I think a lot of people kind of get that confused, right? I think I saw a lot of assignments where the if statement didn't work because you were doing an assignment by using 1 equal sign. So it's when you do an equal sign, you assign the left from the right, it will always be true. So that's why a lot of times people, no matter what they said, the if statement was always going to be true because you used a 1 equal sign. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have here? All right, so there's a question about the assignment 8 being pushed back a couple of days. I think I saw a question from Professor Trees asking about that to see if that can happen. I didn't see a response back on that. But I'm sure if that's going to happen, we'll put that out onto the Piazza. Okay. There There is no practice. There's no due date for the practice quiz, I believe. I mean, there's a practice exam. Oh yeah, the other two is the one I gave. Right, the other two is the practice quizzes that I put out there. Okay. See here. So the case statements and the switch statements, they're not going to be covered for the exam, basically. There's going to be stuff in the exam where there's multiple ways to do the solution, right? So you can do if else, you can just do if, and you can do switch statement. But that wasn't really part of our curriculum for this class. So don't worry about using the switch statement or the case. Having said that, I kind of think if you do like a lot of if else's, it's actually a little bit messy, right? It gets a little bit confusing nesting it, right? All you have to do is miss one of the curly braces and the whole thing gets all screwed up. But I think I was discussing this with Professor Trees. I think on the questions, we're explicitly going to tell you to use the if else because you could use a switch statement. But we didn't really emphasize that in class. That wasn't one of the teaching points or the learning points. So you don't have to worry about it for the exam. Okay, so I hope that answers that question, whether that's going to be on the exam or not. Okay, does anybody else have any questions? So you can take as much time on each section as you want. Yes. The only thing is you won't be able to go backwards. So once you give an answer to something and move forward, that's it. So pick your answers carefully. But once you start, once the exam's been released, then you have the 24 hours. You can take as long as you want with it. All right, any other questions? There's no time limit for each part, right? Do we get the grade back instantly? No. So I think some of the stuff will be pretty easy to grade. Some sections, I should say, but some of the other sections really needs like a TA to match it off. So those are going to be reviewed. I have to double check on the first part of the exam, which those are going to be basically graded automatically, whether those are going to be revealed or not for that section. So I'll double check on that part. But I kind of figured that the exam grades won't be released until the whole exam is graded. But I'll confirm that. Okay. Any other questions? What's the difference with each part or the types of problems? So the beginning part is mostly like your questions about the chapters covered. Yeah, so basically it covers anything like from the like at the beginning part of these sections, it was basically talking about algorithms, heuristics, going into JavaScript. I mean, basically this entire section of the course is covering anything from like the algorithms, heuristics, flowchart, pseudocode JavaScript. Okay. Yeah, like where we started JavaScript, right? So JavaScript goes all the way here, and then the cutoff point is basically here where we switch over to Excel. So Excel is not going to be on the exam. Okay. But anything with JavaScript is fair game. In terms of flowchart, so you're not gonna really draw a flowchart per se, but you know all the different shapes for the flowchart, right? So you have the parallelogram, you have the rectangle, you have the diamond shape, right? And you know what each of those things do, right? And how they kind of fit together. I don't think you're gonna necessarily like draw like a flowchart to upload or anything like that, but you might be given like a flow chart, and maybe we'll be asked to say what pieces of the pseudocode matches up to the flow chart, something like that. Or on the code, you might be looking at samples of code, and we might say, oh, okay, variable X, at the end of the code, what's it going to look like, right? So it goes through the loop. How many times does it go through the loop? Two-dimensional arrays, stuff like that. So, with this type of exam, you're not going to have a whole bunch of like freestyle drawing or anything like that. You have to kind of work with what you can do. So we'll show you different things, and then you'll kind of explain to us what's happening based on the pictures or the code that we show you. Okay. Yeah, I think the exam should be pretty much aligning to all of the, you remember for all of the lectures, you have the key learning points. So you want to make sure you look at those and you understand all of those learning points, or at least be able to look them up fairly quickly. Okay, I understand those ideas. Like I said, for the assignments, I have to say I saw a lot of mistakes between the equals and the double equal. So you really want to be careful with that. Just remember, equals is assignment and double equals is comparison. Okay. So is there a section between single quote and double quote? So you get it gets a little bit confusing if you string a whole bunch of them together. So so let's say you start off something with double quotes, and then you have to stick some other quotes inside of that. You probably want to use a single quote inside of it. Okay. So a lot of times when I'm coding up, in any language, but let's say for the stuff we're doing in this class with JavaScript and HTML, I'll start off, let's say on click, right? And then you have the double quote. And then inside, if I have to do another quote, I'm probably not going to use another double quote. I'll use a single quote inside of it. Otherwise, it gets all confused. Right? It doesn't know whether it's like the end quote for the on click or it's like something else in between. So if you're going to stick quotes within quotes, I would suggest you start off with a double quote and then do a single quote inside of it. Okay. 2D arrays are not in the exam. Yeah, so that I thought that wasn't going to be on there. I think I actually taught that, and then I got some correction to saying that it's not one of the things that people have to know about. And then I think for some reason I saw like a sample question. I think I saw a sample question that had a 2D array in it. So I should double check on that and make sure if that's going to be an exam, I should get that taken out. So you're right. So the 2D array was something that I had taught in there, but Professor Trees reminded me that it's not something that you guys need to know about. But the thinking behind it is kind of similar to like the nested for loops So you saw, I think we saw some examples of nested for loops. And then you also have nested if loops also, like the if else's and stuff like that. So I think the idea is still there. So you should try to make sure you understand how to do nesting, basically. But yeah, the 2D arrays, I have to go back and double check if I saw some exam questions on that, because that should be taken out if it's in there. Okay, so that's a good point. 2D arrays, as I was corrected by Professor Trees, should not be on the exam. Okay. Oh, so when do you use the double quote for the input tag, or double quote, double quote? Well, so all that is just to initialize it. So when you set up like your text box, you can default it to be blank, right? And then someone has to type something in there, or you can default it to have something in there, right? So whatever it is that you want to default with, but most of the time you're gonna default it with something empty. That's why you have like a double quote next to each other. So actually you use the value for the input tag a lot. So I think that was another thing we had issue a lot for assignment 7. There was a lot of issues with getting that value set. But if you're not using JavaScript, if you're using like just HTML, for you to carry those values over and assign them, you end up having to use all of these values. So that's something that caused a lot of problems, I think. So you would set the value, initialize it to, let's say, blank, and then you do some calculation somewhere else, and then let's say on click, you would set like id.value equals to whatever your input was or whatever your calc was. Okay. So, okay. Yeah, so it will be like, so whatever component you're using, it will be like, ID equals to, right? So just like on your radio boxes, right? You have the ID and your name, right? So you remember for all of the radio boxes to work together, so you only select one of them. They all have to have the same name, right? But then the IDs could be different, and you can set ID.value, whatever, not for radio box per se, but for the text boxes, you would say ID.value, whatever the name you put in for the ID is. Okay. Cool. Any other questions? How do we get our exams back? I'm pretty sure we're gonna basically put out the answer key to the exams afterwards. And I have to check with with Professor Trees if we're going to be able to get your exact answers to the exam and publish that out in some way. So I'll double check on that. So once we open up a section, we can't close it and come back. Yeah, once you open it, the clock is not the clock, but once you open it, you can do whatever in there. You can like not answer anything, and it would just sit there. It's just that once you answer something, you can't go backwards and try to redo that question again. Yeah, you can't go backwards. Like, once you answer the question, that's it. So you just keep on moving forward. Is there any reason for that? I think that's just how it's been set up. How long will the exam take? I guess that could vary for any number of people, but I wouldn't think if you just sat down and you focus on it, I wouldn't think the exam should take more than an hour. So So, but I think, for some people, they might take longer to, set things up for the exam. Might take longer to read through it, understand it, whatever. So it might take a little bit longer. But I would say, if you're kind of focused on it and you just sat down and went through it, it shouldn't take more than an hour. Okay. So I have a couple of questions from here, which I'll get answers to, and I'll get that posted up to Piazza tonight. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. No, actually, it's the other way around. The difference, yeah. So your multiple, like let's say your multiple choice, it can cover anything within like the section, within the JavaScript or flowcharts or whatever. Right? So the content could be anything for each of those question types. Okay. Yeah, well, I think I can only talk about what's already been posted out there in terms of what's the structure of the exam and whatnot. So uh, I don't really think the exam is tricky. I think it's pretty straightforward. The code is pretty short. We're not asking people to write a ton of code or look at a ton of code or anything. So you just have to look carefully and just understand what each step is doing. But it's only like, 5, 6 lines of code, maybe, like not too much. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So some of the things that I said I need to follow up with, I'll make sure I get posted at Piazza, but if you don't see it, just let me know. And I'll make sure you guys get answers right away. Um, and I'm available for you guys to do office hours. If you want to do one-on-ones, we can go over anything. Also, I believe Professor Trees has posted out, we're going to be proctoring the exam. Okay, so during each hour or 2 hours, there'll be a different TA or professor that's on standby on WebEx to answer questions about the exam. Okay. Yeah, and I think the quantity 2 of the exam 2 is a similar example. I believe Professor Trees has published the announcement for that. If she hasn't, I'll remind her to get that put out there. It'll have the schedule that will show who's proctoring the exam at what hours. So you'll be able to just click on their personal WebEx. Okay. Okay, yep, I'll remind her to post that out there. Okay. Yeah, like I said, if you guys don't see any responses to what we just discussed here that I need to follow up on, just give me a shout. I probably just forgot, but I'll make sure I'll get these out there as soon as I can. Cool. Anyways, good luck with the exam, and if there's any help before the exam starts, just let me know. All right. Have a good night.